So I started the ASTIN program, and it's a year-long research-based fellowship. It starts out really you really understand how to gain a lot of critical research methods to really start conducting research. You work with a client in the community, so it's very client-focused. Throughout that process, you're constantly going in between what's the proper research for the area I'm focusing on, but also why is this relevant for the client? Why is this relevant for the population in which we're serving? So there's a lot of reflection that is forced upon you during the ASTIN program.
My research question was based around these communities that are facing a lot of poverty. What happens when you provide them a garden into their own home, where they don't have to travel to a grocery store where they can't afford the fresh produce? They can just access it in their backyard. I spent a good amount of time actually building gardens into people's homes, their backyards. And so I would meet the families that were getting the gardens, and then I would have monthly check-ins with them, where I would meet up with the program coordinator at MEND, and we would drive to the person's house, check in to see how they're doing, how their garden is doing. And just lo and behold, when you give people the access, they're gonna eat a lot healthier and they're gonna have better health outcomes.
At the time, we were able to pick an organization, and I wanted to keep working with the nonprofit that I had started working with, which was Kindred Spirits Care Farm. I got to interview up to 10 continuation students on just how the farm really impacted their experience at this high school. And I got to see how they saw the farm, whether it added to their sense of community, especially considering a lot of these students were pushed out of their traditional high schools. Throughout the entire process, I was working with the students. I was gauging their interests, engaging, how can I really offer this research for you all to benefit from? And eventually, by the end of my senior year, I not only had a final presentation, but we were able to receive a $49,000 grant for the nonprofit. So to actually be able to see the tangible results of my research was really satisfying.
I remember my first day at PATH. I was just thrown into this community room, basically, with 30 to 40 people experiencing homelessness on a weekday at 7 a.m. And I called them up one by one and gave them a sack lunch and gave them a hygiene kit and asked how their day was, and completed this 30-minute long packet of information that essentially put those clients on a 2 to 3 year wait list for a shelter bed. And that didn't sit well with anybody. And being able to go back to my fellow Aston scholars and to go back to the professors who ran that program and to share my experiences, they were able to really formulate my civic engagement lens, so I could take a step back and really assess, well, why is that happening? And what can I do to help?
My cohort, we all focused on one organization, which was MEND. So really, you're almost working as a team to solve not just one issue, but multiple issues that really build into the same general objective, which is how to produce something amazing for this client so they can serve their people in the best way. That's the best part about doing real research that is extremely informative, is making sure you have different perceptions, different angles. I was informing other people what I was finding, and they were informing me, which subsequently changed some of my research questions. And my research started to shift to understand how MEND could now harness their population, their staff, their organizational capacity to really become an advocate for this community.
One of the things that I remember the most was when I had to present my research question and this proposal of the research that I would do. I remember I couldn't even be in a room full of 7 other people who were also doing research. I just completely blacked out because I was so nervous. And then by the end of the experience, I was in a room full of maybe 40, 50 people presenting my research, and I just felt so confident in myself. And that's the kind of experience that you don't get just being in a classroom here at UCLA.
So the Aston Scholars Program really taught me the role that research can play in being able to push forward community-based organizations' missions, really the role that academia can play in being able to address these community issues. There's just this praxis, the intersection of theory and practice that can be able to push forward changes in communities. And I think as a researcher, I mean, I love that.
So I think the beauty of being an Aston Scholar is I didn't have any background in completing research. You know, being an English major, I was really good at reading in high volume and picking out snippets that could reinforce whatever thesis that I had created. And it's amazing in analyzing Virginia Woolf, but I had never applied research in something as, vast as homelessness.
The main objective beyond everything is you're here to help people, and you're here to broaden your horizons of really how the world is working and how organizations of people are addressing deep-rooted social issues. The Aston program really allowed me to cultivate the idea that you can be passionate for disadvantaged communities, vulnerable populations, maybe people that just have a different walk of life. It strengthens you as an academic in a way that is unmatched at UCLA. And I really stand by that statement.
So it's been 3 years now since I've graduated. I remember that I had an interview for Los Angeles Homeless Services and thinking this is a real government job. I don't think I'm qualified for this. I met with one of my other advisors, Kathy, and she said, "What are you talking about? Your entire year, over a year that you've been working with MEND and in the Aston Scholars Program, that's a real job. That is real experience. You are just as qualified and ready to enter the workforce as anyone else." And I remember thinking, yeah, she's right. This was real.
Really the organizing skills that I learned through the Aston Scholar Program really showed me that you can garner these stories and this energy to be able to then mobilize and to then be able to address the various social injustices that exist in various communities. And I think I carry those organizing skills now with the veterans I work with.
I had never volunteered at a homeless shelter before. I had never even spoken to a homeless neighbor before. And being a part of the Aston Civic Engagement Scholars Program suddenly empowered me to be a part of that social issue. But I think even further than that, I never knew that I was going to be in the field of advocacy and policy. But once I found this program and I found my thesis with help from our professors and our TAs, I realized that this is something that I'm really good at.